which was drawn down by the prior administration to help the city navigate through the Great Recession. The trust was established to help fund post-employment benefits other than pensions, but the trust has been used in the past as a rainy day fund. In fiscal year 2016, the city deposited an additional $500 million into the trust, raising the balance to a record $3.9 billion. In conclusion, the budget for fiscal year 2017 is balanced, but the economy is slowing and there are risks that could increase the size of the out-year budget gaps. To its credit, the city has increased its reserves to historic levels, which will provide a cushion against any adverse development. In addition, the mayor plans to expand the citywide savings program, which could reduce the size of the projected budget gaps. In conclusion, I would like to commend Mayor de Blasio, City Controller Stringer, the City Council, and their staffs for a job well done. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Controller DiNapoli. City Controller Stringer, do you have any comments?
Yes, sir. So I've been joined by Budget Director Tim Mulligan and our first Deputy Controller, Melina Gilligo. And I really am honored to be here with Mayor de Blasio, Controller DiNapoli, State Budget Director Pica, and the members and the staff of the Financial Control Board. Today, the rigor of oversight of the city's finances creates a culture of sound fiscal stewardship, in no small part due to the creation and history of the Financial Control Board. We all remember that history decades ago, and we are far from that crisis today. But across the globe, we continue to see the dire consequences of governments losing their ability to pay workers and provide citizens with critical services, from Puerto Rico to Rio de Janeiro and Kansas. Nonetheless, the role of the FCB and the city's other budget monitors remain as important today as they were back then, and the city continues to face challenges. The nation has recovered from severe job losses brought on by the 2008 financial crisis, but since the recession, economic growth has been slow, and gains have disproportionately accrued to those near the top. Weak recovery makes our economy vulnerable to shocks, and signs of a potential slowdown are beginning to mount. Despite increases in consumer spending, business investment has declined for 3 consecutive quarters. Of particular concern for our local economy, investment banking revenues from trading and underwriting have fallen over the past year, fueling anticipation of reduced profits and compensation in the financial sector. Later in the year, a monumental presidential election, the Federal Reserve's intention to normalize interest rates may further create uncertainties about the economy. I want to commend the mayor for appropriately noting concerns about the national and global economic forecast in the discussions of the city budget and underscoring the importance of planning for an uncertain future. At the same time, in the city, we have begun to see a slowdown in tax revenue growth. Tax revenues for the last fiscal year are expected to reflect growth of only 3.6%, far less than average annual growth over the last 4 years of 6.5%. In terms of dollars, the city increased the FY 2016 forecast by $1.6 billion during the course of the year, a little more than half the $3.1 billion increase in FY 2015. For the coming year, the administration prudently based the adopted budget on a conservative tax revenue estimate. Therefore, my office anticipates additional revenues, but our forecast over the 4-year financial plan is only $1.6 billion above the city's, 2/3 less than our forecast this time last year. Again, the administration has wisely committed additional funding to address challenges in our homeless shelters and our public hospitals. In collaboration with the City Council, the adopted budget also improved access to library services and expanded summer employment opportunities for our youth. The future of our city depends on such investments in our people and our infrastructure. We also must be cognizant of budget challenges ahead. Our office projects upcoming budget gaps of $3.6 billion in FY 2018 and $4.0 billion in FY 2019. The largest risk to city spending is a potential need for additional city support for our public hospital system. I continue to stand with the mayor in his calls to the federal government to reverse planned Medicaid cuts to safety net hospitals and support the system's planned investments in restructuring for a more stable future. Additional risks to the budget include unstated uniformed overtime costs and lower federal Medicaid reimbursement for special education services. Our preliminary estimate for FY 2016 pension investment returns net of fees of 1.46% will also increase city contributions by approximately $122 million in FY 2018, growing to $366 million in FY 2020. I'm pleased that for the second consecutive year, the mayor has implemented a citywide savings plan, including savings from refinancing city bonds. Working together with my office, the administration has capitalized on low interest rates, and we will save $688 million over the life of the bonds. For the third consecutive year, the mayor has also set aside additional resources to bolster our financial cushion against a potential downturn. The adopted budget maintains the existing level of reserves, increased the prepayment from $3.5 to $4 billion in FY 2017, deposited an additional $500 million into the Retiree Health Benefits Trust Fund. Altogether, these actions increase our total budget cushion by $900 million. We should strive to do more, and we're going to work with the city to see if we can move that along in the future. The city's fiscal challenges should not be underestimated, but I know by working together, all of us, we can ensure the city remains in sound, strong financial shape. So it's great to present to all of you today, and I thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Controller Stringer. I'd like to now call on Jeff Summer, our Acting Executive Director of the Board, to present the staff's comments.
Thank you, Chairman. Staff issued its report on the four-year financial plan on July 19th. I'd just like to summarize it. The city ended fiscal 2016 with a surplus of almost $4 billion. The surplus, built from a combination of higher than forecasted revenue plus expenditure savings, will be used to prepay fiscal 2017 expenses. It is important to note that the city was able to achieve this surplus even after funding agency new needs of $918 million, increased pension costs of $530 million, as well as additional contributions of $500 million to the Retiree Health Benefit Trust and $179 million to health and hospitals. The fiscal years 2017 to 20 financial plan presents a balanced budget for fiscal 2017, but with recurring expenditures growing at a faster rate than revenues, out-year gaps persist. There is pressure to both revenue and expenditure forecasts that are likely to occur, which will require the city to maintain its conservative budget management practices. In the financial plan, the city projects that city fund revenues will grow at a higher rate than last year's plan. In a less uncertain environment, the city's forecast will be easily achievable. Nevertheless, the sharp deceleration of city fund growth in fiscal 2016 presents a timely caution that strong growth cannot always be relied on. Adding to the uncertainty is the vote of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. With that in mind, the city should continue to be cautious in its revenue forecast, primarily in the business taxes, which showed weakness through June, and review its decision to reduce reserves for the property tax in the out years of the plan. These concerns may be partially offset by increased miscellaneous revenues. The growth on the expenditure side comes mostly from higher salaries and wages related to the settled collective bargaining contracts, higher health care costs, and rising debt service. The contractual agreements with almost 99% of its employees have given the city crucial budget certainty. The health care savings agreed to in collective bargaining, $1.3 billion of recurring savings, are beginning to take hold. These efforts must continue and increase as the next round of collective bargaining continues. Debt service costs are rising due to the high amount of debt that has been and is expected to be issued to support the city's capital program. Debt service is projected to grow 23% from fiscal 2017 to 2020. It must be noted that the city, in projecting debt service costs, utilizes conservative interest rate assumptions. The current plan anticipates that the prevailing low interest rates will increase. If, however, they do not, there will likely be budget savings. At this point, we already believe that at a minimum, debt service costs in fiscal 2017 will be lower by $75 million because it is unlikely the city will undertake short-term borrowing given its extraordinarily high unrestricted cash balances. Two other areas that we believe will be sources of expenditure pressure are pensions and increased subsidies for health and hospitals. In fiscal 2016, the city's actuaries' request updated mortality tables and increased the pension contribution by $600 million. pension fund investments in 2015 returned only 3.3%, which is lower than the required 7%. The financial plan already assumes the phase-in of increased contributions to make up this loss. The investment return in fiscal 2016 was even worse, a little over 1.4%. The city will have to begin phasing in additional contributions starting in fiscal 2018, growing to about $400 million by 2020. The second concern is health and hospitals. As people have spoken about at the meeting already, the city has prepared a report that projects cumulative losses of more than $5.4 billion over 2017 to 2020. In fiscal 2016, the city had provided a $160 million subsidy with $337 million of miscellaneous revenue reimbursement related to debt service, fringe benefits, and judgment claims. In addition, since settling the recent round of collective bargaining, the city has chosen to absorb the wage increase for covered employees in health and hospitals. The city has developed a plan to maximize federal and state support as well as reduce costs. To the extent that this plan is not successful, there will be continual pressure for the city to increase its subsidy. Overall, our analysis projects risks that could range from about $200 million in fiscal 2017 to almost $900 million by fiscal 2020. The city, however, is well positioned to deal with these risks and the additional pressures we identified. Fiscal 2017 contains $1.5 billion combined in the General Reserve and Capital Stabilization Account, and each out year has $1 billion in the General Reserve. The city has prudently already announced, as the mayor has confirmed today, plans to develop additional agency savings to be included in the November modification to the financial plan. These actions should produce recurring savings to stay ahead of the financial pressures that are likely to occur.
Thank you, Director Summer. Do any of the private members have any comments? Mr. Levin?
Yes, thank you. On behalf of the three private members, I would like to comment on the city's fiscal condition. Mr. Mayor, we agree with the praise and concerns the staff and other members of the board have expressed today. We also see the national and local economy as in transition and subject to events not in our control. This makes the city's continued use of conservative revenue forecasting important. We have already seen underperformance by the city's pension fund portfolios, requiring increased contributions by the city. With that in mind, the city has been prudent in maintaining reserves of $1.5 billion in FY 2017 and $1 billion in each of the out years. The city needs to continue seeking agency savings to reduce expenditures, and we agree with your decision to seek proposals with recurring savings to be included in the November modifications. As you know, our main long-term concern over the last several years has surrounded the unfunded liabilities concerning pensions and especially retiree health benefits. The pension systems are now funded at a little over 70%, a drop from last year. The $52 billion underfunding will need to be funded over the actuarial life of the city's employees. As it relates to health benefits, you have taken initial steps to both reduce the size of the liability and increase the funding for the Retiree Health Benefits Trust. As of June 2015, the unfunded liability is $85.5 billion, lower by about $4 billion from last year. This is due primarily to lower healthcare cost inflation and the $1.3 billion of recurring savings the city is achieving as part of the last round of collective bargaining. This unfunded liability, however, is likely to grow significantly again. Healthcare costs for both active employees and retirees grew 25% over the financial plan period. The city and its labor partners need to continue the work you started to develop and agree to additional measures which have recurring value and truly bend the healthcare cost curve. The next round of collective bargaining has already begun, and we hope you are successful. Over all years of your administration, you have added funding to the Retiree Health Benefits Trust, with you and the City Council agreeing to an additional $500 million last fiscal year. The fund now stands at $4 billion. This has been a good start, but more needs to be done. We recommend that you consider creating a formal process as opposed to the current ad hoc one, and a minimum funding level for every year to be added to the trust. The process should then consider at the beginning of the fiscal year if more than a minimum level could be added. Another approach we recommend you consider is to determine the annual cost of retiree health benefits for newly hired employees. After that determination, these costs should be funded by adding to the trust over the expected working life of the employee. Over many years, this approach would eventually significantly reduce the unfunded liability. Before ending, we would just want to say that we are also concerned as you and the other members have stated, that the financial problems concerning health and hospitals will create added pressures to the city's budget. We note that in addition to the $5.4 billion that the city has identified from FY 2017 to FY 20, the system has its own unfunded liability for retiree health benefits, currently at $4.9 billion, which are not being addressed. I might say, if I may add, on behalf of the private members, we have great respect for the acting director, and the acting director has extraordinarily expressed confidence in the steps you and your staff are taking with respect to the city. We believe that you continue to take the important steps to both reduce the unfunded liability and increase funding to the trust. You will contribute to the long-term fiscal stability of the city that you have achieved over the last 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Mayor de Blasio, do you want to respond to any of the comments thus far?
Simply to say I very much appreciate all of the testimony of my colleagues, particularly thank the private members for their analysis. As you feel, we're very focused on the question of how we work on healthcare costs and how we lay in additional resources. That's going to be an ongoing conversation we certainly want to have with you, and we want to see how we can do more in the future. On the cost side, I remain very optimistic, because when we struck the labor plans, made the agreements with labor, we saw it as a beginning. We saw it as a floor, not a ceiling. That there was tremendous enthusiasm, actually, with our labor partners to understand that the future of government's ability to provide services to the public rested on getting it right on healthcare savings. And I think it's been a very cooperative and positive process. I think some of the, I agree, of course, we understand issues like longevity and changes in our society. At the same time, we're also learning much more about how to achieve savings that are more foundational, how to focus more on preventative care, for example. So I'm very hopeful that in not only, as we said, at the conclusion of the current labor agreements, that there's ongoing savings, but we think we have the opportunity to go even farther in cooperation with labor.
Excellent. We think you've just achieved notable achievements.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm now going to call on Jeff Summer to report on the staff's findings regarding fiscal year 2016 and their recommendation concerning the proposed resolution.
Thank you. I want to review the 5 conditions that, if any one of them occurred, would require the board to request the reimposition of the control period. The first one is the city shall have incurred a deficit in excess of